Blockchain is bringing about many new concepts. And I don't know about you, but sometimes it takes me a bit to wrap my mind around a lot of the new tech that as it rolls out. Now, I remember when this new concept we refer to now as DeFi was new in the crypto world. I didn't even pay tons of attention to it at first because it was a little bit hard to understand at first. Now, that decision, if I had delved into it back in March of 2020, when I first heard about it, would have made me millions extra. Instead, I was late to that party. Well, today we have Leo from Cortex joining us to talk about what the Web3 revolution is and what Cortex is doing to bring social media ownership back to us, as well as freedom from terms of service cancellations and how billions will change hands in the Web3 revolution. Welcome to the Crypto Rain channel. I'm your host, Jay Rain. And if you like money and you like crypto and you're looking for a real investor's take on the crypto market, join the Rainmaker family. You can do that as easily as liking this video and subscribing with the all notifications bell enabled. Do note I'm not a financial advisor. I'm a crypto investor myself. And I share with you how I think about the crypto market in specific cryptos I like. Now, I do own or plan to own most of what I talk about on this channel because I don't talk about crypto projects I don't believe in, and I don't invite them onto the channel. Special shout out and thanks to our Patreon members. We do have a private Discord that our Patreon members get access to. Now, make it rain for that like button and strap in for the show. Let's welcome our guest, Leo from Cortex.
Hey, Rain. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us today. I wanted to go live with this interview so the audience can ask any questions they have. I very much love our Rainmaker family, and some of the best questions come directly from the audience members. So I will have the comment section pulled up to the side so that the audience, as they think of some questions, they can go ahead and put them in there and ask what questions they have. Now, crypto and blockchain are leading this concept that we call Web3. Can you explain for those that are not familiar with what Web3 is, what it is?
Yeah, I think of Web3 very simply as the user-owned web or user-controlled web. I think what that means is essentially, when you tweet one day on Web3, your tweets will ultimately belong to you. So even if the Twitter of Web3 somehow kicks you off, you'll still own all those tweets. Those tweets will still belong to you, and maybe you could go to another platform or you could publish them yourself. But at the end of the day, you'll lose all that. I've been on Twitter now since 2008, 14 years. So I have a huge backlog of information there. So at the end of the day, you want to be able to own and control all that stuff and own and control your whole history, even the private groups that you belong to. So first and foremost, it's the user-owned web. And there's two big components of that. One is the user-owned identity. And then beyond that is the user-owned data that, much like Bitcoin or other cryptocurrency will exist in a peer-to-peer network. So only the key holder can access it or update it, I should say. You can think of, maybe you've seen those infographics that show Web 1 as username and password. And what that really means is that, whatever website that was, they owned your identity, that username, and the password, and it existed in some database somewhere, and whatever you posted on there also belonged to them in that database. You move to Web 2, and it's more of the interactive web and the social web. You see the logins with Facebook or login with Google. What that really means is your identity belongs to, a cloud service. And your data now belongs to a cloud service as well, to a Facebook or a Google. And that identity you use, even though you log in somewhere else, that identity is still owned by them. And when you log in with MetaMask or something similar with a wallet in Web3, what a lot of people don't really maybe recognize is that the unique thing about that is it's not owned by anybody. The relationship between the public key or the address and the private keys that you control, which most people know as their seed phrase, is through math. They're mathematically related and mathematically provable. So no external entity owns and controls that unless you're on an exchange. And similarly, the same way you log into or move coins around with those keys, those coins themselves don't live in a database somewhere. Of course, they live in a peer-to-peer network. And ultimately, Web3 will have the same things, but for data and information. So you post something, it still belongs to you, the user.
Yeah, so it's been interesting. I'm old enough to remember like the birth of the internet, and I was out of the country for a couple of years, and I came back, and my sister was trying to explain to me how to log into the internet and how to get an email, and I was a little bit confused, even though I was pretty young. I was like 20, and I was trying to figure that out. And okay, so wow, this thing called the internet's amazing. Now, 2 years prior, I did have an army buddy that was helping walk me through it, but that was like way back in the days that you had to like dial into a university to get access to the internet. So now there started to be like easy dial-up access. And then going to Web 2 is like Facebook was created, where you could create a login. And it was so cool because you could share your pictures and stuff. And it's like, oh, this is so amazing. And what we learned is that was amazing. It was some amazing technology. There's a few problems that came about from Web 2. Now, the US in the 1990s had some pretty smart politicians, and they passed some pretty good laws that allowed that tech sector to really blossom. And they came up with a framework because there were some problems with like having places where anyone can post anything. They're like, well, we don't want terrorists to be able to recruit, and we also don't want child porn available on the internet. So they put in some restrictions and guidelines because, Facebook and some of these other sites decided, hey, we want to be able to have some control, though we're just going to allow people to publish anything they want. So whatever political views, even if they were crazy, you believe aliens should rule the world, you could post it. And, if they were publishers. In the last few years, we've seen a few problems. Number one, that with Web 2, we don't own our own data. So you have been building an amazing database for Facebook so that they know everything about you. And they sell that for a lot of money to advertisers, which is just great. I mean, we get it for free. But what if there was a better way that you could own that data, and at some point you can monetize that and allow to sell to advertisers what you want and what you don't want them to know about you? So grateful that Facebook and Twitter and a lot of the social media companies created what they created. And I'm excited for the new revolution, which has to do with us owning that data. And I think all of us in crypto are starting to understand, like, not your keys, not your crypto. Oh my gosh, I get to own my store of value as far as monetary, like Bitcoin and other things, in my own wallet. And nobody can take that with me. I can take it with me anywhere in the world. Well, Web3 allows you to have your identity, your social media posts and other things that you can put out there, that you own that data. Now, still, platforms that are publishing that information, they're going to fall under the same guidelines. You and I were talking about this. Like, they can't have like child porn, and we can't have terrorist recruitment available. And so even though you own your own data, there will still be publishers, right, that can like say, we're going to restrict that user from our site because clearly he's recruiting for terrorist activities.
Yeah, the network we're building will operate very much like a proof of stake system, but for content. And it's pretty much built. So, what we were out in East Barcelona last week showing a demo of the actual network working so that, the biggest hurdles for Web3 have been cost and complexity. But the network we've developed has ways of bundling transactions in such a way that they become, very, very low cost, because you can essentially put, 10,000, almost unlimited content updates into a single hash on chain. And we're building on Polygon. So of course that's very, very inexpensive as well. So I think we've really overcome the cost hurdle. And then on the complexity side, we've abstracted a lot of that difficulty from of being able to publish. So now we have a very simple, what you see is what you get kind of interface where, anybody without any crypto or coding knowledge can post something, with the back end being on IPFS. And very soon, like within the next couple of weeks, you'll be able to publish to are .html or .human domains, which you can get for free at hmn.domains in just 2 clicks, and be able to start publishing to that in preview mode in the next couple of weeks.
Right.
But going back to the publishing point, you can kind of think of publishers in this network as being like miners in a proof of stake system, the same kind of method that Ethereum is moving to right now.
Yeah.
And so in this proof of stake system, the publishers will collect, maybe it's the new Twitter, the new Medium, will collect those posts, those updates from their users, bundle them into a single kind of content state hash that's put on chain. And the relationship then becomes between the publishers and the users in terms of what content gets published. But at the same time, the users will still own their content. So if for some reason a user doesn't follow the rules or does something illegal, they can still get kicked off of the content network. But at the same time, they own their data. And in some ways, it becomes even more traceable. In many ways, it becomes more traceable if people are doing something illicit when in this kind of a network, because it's the end of the day, somebody had to sign for it. So at the end of the day, somebody's responsible. But for the most part, that's obfuscated by the publishers until something goes wrong. But at the end of the day, they still own the data. It's still theirs.
So what's interesting is if you had gone back 25 years ago and you had said, oh, there's going to be this new thing where people can share pictures of each other with their friends, and they will be the wealthiest companies. In fact, the wealthiest people in the world will be the ones that create and invest in these companies. Mm-hmm. You would have looked like a crazy person talking about hey, they're going to be bigger than IBM. They're going to be bigger than this and that. It's
I think it's very similar today. And same people, probably very similar people, are the same people are saying, there's no business model for Web3, or, and people said the same thing back then, there's no business model for a Facebook or a Twitter. And for a long time, of course, there wasn't, it's in the Social Network movie, and Twitter heard that for a long time. But I think what you've come to realize in this knowledge economy, and I actually have a piece about this coming out in VentureBeat in probably about a week. In this knowledge economy, the currency really is attention. And that's not really any different in Web3. The difference is, I think in many ways, Web3 is going to look like one giant open social network, because each piece of content, each part of a web page that you'll see in the future will actually be tied to an individual and their identity. It could be a secret identity, but it's still an identity and a bank account. In our platform, each page that you create, each piece of content you create will also be a crypto address, very much like .eth today, that can store value. So I think, I don't even know, nobody can really predict what that'll mean when, every piece of data has identity and stores of value built into the actual fundamental layers of the web. But it's going to be very different. And open up a lot of doors.
What's funny is, as humans, we're very good at seeing patterns like once they've happened. And part of the reason I missed a really big boom within crypto in the middle of still what was a bear market, and we call that DeFi summer. This was 2020. And June and July, every project related to decentralized finance, or DeFi, took off tremendously. And I remember trying to learn about it in March, and it was just like a different concept. I hadn't ever seen this pattern before. And so when you and I were talking yesterday and you were sharing with me some things that Cortex is doing, it just reminded me of the feeling that I had when I was trying to wrap my mind around DeFi, and it was hard. And so I just thought, well, I'll kind of figure it out later, and missed that big boom when it did boom, which happened actually in that case just months later. And like some of the projects related to it went like 1,000x. It was crazy. And I was like, oh man, I missed that. And I could have jumped in midway through, but I have a philosophy that I don't chase boats that I've missed. And so if you think about where social media has gone and the importance of this ownership, and I don't fully know where Web3 goes and which companies will totally end up dominating that area. Maybe many of the crypto projects do together, but I know that some of the most expensively valued companies in the world are all social media / Web 2 companies. That as we transition to Web 3, yeah, I'm having a bit of trouble wrapping myself around what the future looks like with that, and what the future looks like with social media ownership of your own data, so that maybe there's ways that you can monetize that instead of that being monetized for you to make Facebook rich. That, every own person themselves has some way to monetize it, as well as like true ownership.
That's part of the hope, certainly. I mean, even with your private, or what we'd like to think of as private communications, like Gmail, that information is used. You put something in an email and miraculously you see an ad for it, a minute later. And, some of that is pure coincidence, but some of it, is it's definitely being read. What I hope, and there is privacy built into the Cortex network. So what is private, you can trust is truly private, and you can hold the same data as stuff you'll be publishing into the public sphere. And the hope is that when you know that your private data is actually private, that you'll be able to, become algorithm proof is the term that I use for it, that you won't have to abide by the Web 2 algorithms as they are today that kind of determine, what kind of ads you want to see, and really on some level, you can argue how big of a level, but take away some of, what we'd like to think of as free will. You get pushed into decisions that you wouldn't have made normally, right? Whether it's, looking at Facebook and YouTube posts or TikTok or whatever, you get led down a path. So in many ways, the hope is that this can at least partially help individuals become more sovereign, not just in their identities and in their, value stores, but in their decision making. And that, a marketplace for algorithms that actually work for users will grow up, and you can decide how you want your data to be used and how to get the most value out of it.
Well, that makes sense. So where do you see Web3 being, especially with what Cortex is working on, say like 5 years from now? I know that's a long ways out, but
yeah, that is a long ways out.
Right. And it's hard to see where this is going to go because it's literally on the cutting edge, right? Right now, if you notice, like a lot of people don't tune in for this, just like in March of 2020, talking about DeFi, because there was no pattern that people could easily see and figure out what this decentralized finance thing was. And that's why so many people missed out on the huge gains that came, in that case, just months later. But it doesn't always just happen months later. But I think there's going to be a big shift is the awareness wave of this, of the value in Web3 and owning your own data, having control of that content, having privacy on the things that you want private, and being able to monetize the other things because you truly own it, right? Even on YouTube, like once I publish something, I don't own it on YouTube. Yeah, so they can do whatever. And if they say I'm violating terms of service because I say one thing wrong, then they, give me strikes and take down the video and cancel my whole presence on their site for not even just like illegal stuff, but just stuff that they might disagree with. So,
yeah. So I think in the future, you have to maybe go back 5 years before now. And what big was happening in 2017? CryptoPunks is the thing, the first thing that comes to mind, the first kind of NFTs. And I remember well when those came out. And, I think I even had a couple for, a couple of weeks, sadly. And then I was like, oh, that was fun. I'll sell, sold them for $70 or whatever. And, I remember people having them as their profile pics, but it was a very little, niche little community, niche little community of, kind of, people who were knowledgeable about crypto back then. And I think now, I think what I see now is like you can actually, you see the .eth domains, I think, and now we have these HMN domains. Again, that's at hmn.domains. you can get for free. Those domains are going to become more and more central to how people operate online, and what their identities are going to look like. What your login is going to look like is going to be based a lot on these NFT domains, and your kind of digital kingdom, as we call it, will live under these domains, and you'll be able to mint not just the NFT token, but the NFT web page and the NFT kind of social things and all the kind of things that go with it in some really unique ways. So I think, I don't know exactly what it will look like, but I'm sure that NFT domains are going to be a big part of it. And that these digital kingdoms that are also will be NFTs and owned by users, but also transferable, are going to create lots of unique kind of value. So you can imagine if you can say you have an NFT domain like leo.hmn, or you have a marvel.hmn, and then you have, Captain America.marvel.hmn. You can start not just having an NFT for that character, but you can start having an NFT and a set of NFTs that kind of tell a much more complete story through, a complete media experience in a way that's transferable and can have value attached to it. I was at ETH Barcelona, and the tickets to the conference were distributed as NFTs, and it just means that a music producer can become their own ticket master that can be can be their own distribution system for their music. So I think we're starting to see through NFTs the ownership of media and the exchange of media in some new ways, and I think it's just going to build off of that. So almost anything you can imagine digital. One other area that's really promising that we're working on is the relationship between NFTs and real world assets, say buildings, and modeling the inside of buildings. So that if you buy a building, you don't just get the building, but you get the whole history of everything that's happened in the building and the maintenance of the building that's happened. So like a Carfax for buildings that actually lives and moves with the building and adds value to the building when it gets resold. We're one of the companies that we're close with is called Materium, that was founded by Vinay Gupta, as one of the original Ethereum founders. I shouldn't say founder. He led the launch of the first Ethereum launch in when it was 2014 or 2015. And they've been spending several years kind of getting the legal system to line up with the transfer of ownership of NFTs in the online blockchain or crypto system. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that, where a lot of transfer of property happens through blockchains and through NFTs, so that you could decide you want to go out and buy a 5G tower somewhere, but it's hard to determine what the value of some 5G tower is off on a rooftop somewhere. You don't know a lot about it. You have to go send people out, but a lot of that information will be immutable and captured, and will live with the actual physical real world asset itself. And will be more trusted. So you create these marketplaces for real world assets that has not existed before, because you have more information that's trusted about them, and you can create new marketplaces for them. That's one area that I think is going to be really ripe.
That makes sense.
And I had a piece also on VentureBeat a little while ago about that the metaverse. I mean, meta means something that's about something else. It's self-referential. So when I think of the metaverse, I think of a new universe that's describing the universe that we live in. And so the metaverse, I think, in 5 years, built on crypto, is going to be very much about that. It's going to be trusted information and exchangeable information marketplaces about the world that we live in.
Yeah, what's funny is I remember the internet taking off, and some of the audience members, I see some joining. Abe, want to shout out and say, hey, Abe, Shahid Hamid, I think I said that right. Let me know if I didn't. Phil Morley, John Steves. Phil is asking about Freeway Token, something I cover frequently. Apparently, it looks like it's dropped like 85% today. Last time it did this, it was because of a hack. Maybe it got compromised some way. If so, then they just kind of airdrop some. I'll look into that later. right now, we're talking about Web3 and Cortex and what Cortex is doing, but also where Web3 is going, because it is something a little bit hard to wrap our minds around. And I remember missing massive gains because I didn't really dig in when decentralized finance was really kind of new and not talked about, not well understood. And those that did reaped massive, massive gains. Like some things went 200x, 500x, 1000x. And watching all that happen right under my nose when I was heavy in crypto was painful. So as I was talking to Leo yesterday, and he was like, hey, we're getting Cortex to the point that it can be so easy that a grandma can publish her own website on something that she owns. I thought, oh, that is a big step. Because right now, Web 2 is getting easy enough that a grandma can publish a website and not own it, right? She doesn't really own it. She has a login to some service that she has to pay a monthly fee. Otherwise, it's then gone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And probably she doesn't really own her own data completely and everything. If she cancels that service, it's gone. So when Leo was talking to me about Web3 going that way, I was like, that's one of the things that's held back the growth of Web3 is just the difficulty, the complexity. It's very much programmers right now creating solutions. And even hearing about it, it's pretty technology intensive, right? And trying to wrap your mind around what actual things will look like within Web3 in 3 or 4 or 5 years is a little bit hard, as the conversations are pretty much complex, technical. That's why I want to bring Leo on. So if you in the audience have any questions about Web3, about Cortex, feel free to put them in the comments. So Grandma, talk to me about a grandma being able to publish a site on Web3 and what that looks like.
Sure, I can probably just show you. Might be easier.
Yeah, if it should allow you to share your screen, and then I can put it up here.
Yeah. Let's see. I'll have to switch tabs, but so are you seeing that?
It's coming up. There we go. Yes.
So yeah, so this is a very simple what you see is what you get kind of web page editor. So, I could go in here and type that crypto rain right now. And so I'm logged in with MetaMask here. Very simple, no more difficult than Google Docs, right? Mm-hmm. And of course, this is very Web 1 because, in the near term, we're mostly talking about static pages, although we have some workarounds for doing that. And the way we've done things that I don't think anybody else has done is these can hold pretty much anything that a GitHub repository can hold. So it can hold video, it can hold images like this that I've put in here. And all I got to do is go to publish, and it will take a second. I'm probably going to have to switch.
What screen you're sharing?
Which screen I'm sharing, yeah. So let me go back to that. And let's see if that's the one. It's going to be the first one. Sorry about that. I'll be right back.
No worries.
Let me just close all my other tabs. That'll make it easier to select the right one because it doesn't give you a preview. Okay.
I know. I frequently have like 20 tabs open.
Okay, but now I know the interface. So there. right. So here, I just typed I'm on Crypto Rain right now.
Yeah.
Right? Right now, I don't know if you can see the link that's here. It might just be showing the
I see /cortex.web.
right. Yeah, but you don't see the URL above. It's just not sharing that.
Right.
I'm going to put that in the chat, and then anybody can go to that link and they can see the website that's been published.
It might not let it come out. Okay, putting it in the private chat.
Or maybe you can share that somehow.
I don't know if it'll even let me. Let's see if it will let me.
Or I can just drop it into the page here. It's even easier.
So it disabled it as a link, but that is quite a long URL.
Yeah, so that right now is the hash that's on IPFS.
Okay.
So IPFS is like the distributed system, right? Within the next couple of weeks, though, you'll be able to say this down here is our free.human domain site, hmn.domains. You go there, you can get a free HMN domain that'll be based on your Twitter name in a couple of clicks. You'll be able to publish to that .hmn domain in the same way, but it'll give you a nicer looking URL. So this is just an example showing that, literally you don't need to know anything about IPFS. You don't have to interact with IPFS. You don't need to go to IPFS, put in the page, get a content ID hash back, go put that hash back into ENS to get ENS to display the page on your .eth domain. It's very simple, straightforward. Create any page you want, publish it immediately without really knowing any of that ugly backend stuff, and be able to claim your domain in just 2 clicks.
So I know I went in there. So it was, remind me what it was, hmn.domains. And then I shared out that tweet, and then it takes like a little while to process. And then it essentially gives you your Twitter ID.hmn. Is that?
Yeah, it gives you their Twitter ID.hmn as a NFT that'll show up in the whatever address you provided when you went through the process.
Okay, and
or that you tweeted. You can just go mention at HMN domains in a tweet and put your public address in there, Ethereum or Polygon address in there. Actually, these are on Polygon, so just don't put. Actually, it shouldn't matter now. Anyways, put a Polygon address in there to be safe, and it'll show up in your Polygon account in like 20 minutes. And then in a few weeks, you'll be able to start publishing pages with that.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, that's exciting to see it continuing to move forward. I remember when we first talked, it was like 6 months ago, and I was trying to wrap my mind around where this is all going. And the discussions were even more technical back then. And I could see that it was going a direction. But I guess I'm starting to have a little bit better vision. And I'm really good at pattern recognition. And I guess the pattern that I'm recognizing here is that this technology, the biggest companies in the world, some of the highest value companies in the world, Twitter, Facebook, Google, are all social media related companies.
Uh-huh.
And but it's Web 2. And as we go to Web 3, it really is hard to picture what that future looks like because it hasn't taken shape yet. But some of the valuations of companies that hit big within the Web3 world will probably have some of the biggest valuations in the world then too.
Yeah, I think whatever gets people's attention and where people spend their time is, now that combined with where they spend their coins is going to be that's a pretty good bet on where the value is going to go.
Yeah.
And I think, you already see that like Jack is working towards, his, what he calls Web 5 or whatever, but a lot of what he's calling Web 5 is right here, right now. We just showed you a big chunk of it. So
you just throw in a bigger number at the end to make it sound cool. But it's essentially Web 3. And what's interesting about some of the projects that went so huge this last year, which was CryptoPunks and Bored Ape, really they just went so big because they were able to be used as profile pics on Web 2, right? So people would upload as their profile pic on Twitter or other social media sites, and just the status related to that. But later on it'd be interesting to see that as people have their own domains that they own, if people don't use those as flexes too.
Well, the cool thing about these domains, the Butterfly Protocol domains that we use, is they are different than other domain name NFTs in that they are full NFTs. Most NFT domains, I won't even mention the competitors, but they're more like pointers to a space. These are full NFTs, meaning couple of nice nuances. One, you can edit the metadata, meaning you can put a picture in there. So if you want to mint an NFT series, you could do it as an NFT domains, and then you're not just selling the NFT as an image. You're selling that image as well as an entire site and storytelling architecture underneath that image and that name. And you can do things like, seen some NFTs out there that have energy levels based on how long somebody's been holding the NFT. So you can do things like that, which comes down to editing the metadata within the NFTs and creating custom fields. So there's a lot of kind of more flexibility with these NFT domains than there are in others. Plus, with the Cortex network, you get all the data infrastructure underneath to go with it.
I'd like to say I understood that. I did not.
Yeah, it's just
you can make a whole series so.
Well, it's just it's either a picture or it's a database. Do you want just a picture, or do you want an entire infrastructure of stuff you can do and create around that picture?
Okay,
that's the difference.
So you made a Happy Apes NFT thing, and you made 10,000 different versions of them. Those could be associated with each one of those could be associated with an NFT related to a domain as well. And so when they get that NFT related to the domain, they also get that image with it. So it's just like another layer on. Instead of just owning also the picture, they also get a unique domain for that, which they can then build out a website.
Yeah, build out a video site, or any kind of content you want to create around that character. Put different worlds in there. I mean, put other NFTs in there. It's going to be layers upon layers of NFTs and digital assets that are recombined in new ways.
That is hard to wrap my mind around.
It is
to bring you on, because this is challenging me in the way that DeFi and
now, I don't know if you remember the early days where you went to a web page and you said, "Oh, well, that's a web page. That's interesting." And then all of a sudden you could do something like order an airline ticket through the web page because there's a database on the back end attached to it and some, financial stuff. I think that's the kind of level that we're at right now is NFTs are not just these single pages anymore of a picture. NFTs are becoming an entire infrastructure underneath that's much more meaningful and usable.
Yeah, what I think about NFTs is it's provable ownership of something in the digital world that may also relate to something in the physical world.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So Bored Ape Yacht Club NFT is essentially digital ownership of an image, one of the Bored Apes, a specific one that has specific attributes.
And not just the image, but the provable history.
Yeah,
I would say is maybe a bigger part of that.
What
you can see where the picture originated and who's owned it over time, and so you have a direct connection to the origin of that thing.
Yeah, and that's something we a little bit take for granted. But when you shared where this is going with NFTs, especially like digital representations of something that's physical, and then having like the whole maintenance history related to that. So buildings, not only when you buy the building, but then every repair, everything that was made gets updated to that NFT. So you can see the full update history. That adds real value. I mean, it makes sense that every country in the world in the future is going to use NFTs to maintain the archives of who owns what buildings, and even titles to vehicles. Makes sense that those will all be NFTs. I had never thought about the repair records and the update records being associated with that. In fact, the plans, the building plans and everything all being able to be associated with that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, the metaverse, it's it's a whole layer of information about the world we live in. That's what it is to
Yeah.
me.
Those tuning in,
Provable.
great for you to be joining us. I know this topic is hard, and it is, and it doesn't draw a lot of viewers, and that's okay. I wanted to cover it anyway, because if you look back at videos that came out on DeFi in March of 2020 and April of 2020, the views on those sucked, especially the first months, because it was hard concepts that people didn't get.
Yeah.
But and I didn't. I tried listening. Coin Bureau had some great videos on DeFi, and I would make it about 5 minutes in before I just had to turn it off because I did not get what they were doing, what it was all about. And I remember that costing me millions of investment dollars because I didn't buy anything DeFi related because I didn't understand it and missed out on that. Hey, Santiago Toho from Argentina. Bienvenido. I love that, this is YouTube is still Web 2, but it gives us reach to all the world, and it gives all the world reach to information, like up-to-date information, cryptocurrency, or any subject that they're interested in. So anything else interesting Cortex is working on that we haven't covered yet?
I think we've got the testnet live. You'll be able to build with these domains in the next few weeks. And the actual staking network for Web3 content, we're targeting September. A few dependencies there, but look out for that. Because, if you really want to get a foot in the door to a real Web3 content network, this will be it.
So a lot of stakers will be more technical related people that are then going to stake and help validate the content, right? And they'll get some kind of reward for doing that.
Yeah. So essentially, there's a small fee for each update that you do on chain, and those fees go into the reward pool
for those that are then staking.
For those that are staking, yeah.
Makes sense. That part is a technology that I already wrapped my mind around. That's easy for me to understand. But where Web3 can go, a little bit nebulous, right? A little bit.
It is and it isn't. I don't know. I think.
Well, you think about it every single day. I think about it once a week, because it's hard to see the future. And I remember, so I was in the military. I had this roommate. And he had this computer, and he bought a somewhat updated computer. And so we used the phone line to dial into a bulletin board system so that we could play this game. And it was all text based. And him and I took over that world. It was a lot of fun on this game. And he was trying to explain to me what this whole concept of the internet was. And I remember I don't get it. You have to. Okay, so we have to call into a university on the phone line. That university is hooked up to a bunch of other universities that then have a bunch of information. So what?
What value could there possibly be in connecting two computers together? It's that doesn't seem valuable.
He still currently has in stock or something. I don't get the application of that right now. It's hard to see and understand where exactly the future is going. But I know when I've learned to recognize when a technology is going to happen. How it's going to happen, it's not quite clear to me yet, but it's definitely going to happen.
Yeah, I remember when there were some VC firms back in the early 2000s that were focused on blogging, and what they were really focused on, it didn't have a name yet, it was called Web 2, the social web, the interactive web. And to me, that seemed really crazy. I mean, like a blog, okay, so you can publish your own content, you can self-publish, that's interesting, but is that really going to be a huge industry that VCs are staking their bets on right now? But go figure.
Behind that.
Yeah.
Who cares if mom can share pictures of her son, and if you think about Facebook, was started at Harvard as just a way for college students to be able to interact with each other and post pictures and then tag their friends in it and stuff. And Facebook and the creator of Facebook, one of the wealthiest people in the whole world now, because
Zuckerberg,
Zuckerberg, And I can't wait though till the twins are richer than Zuckerberg, because I haven't even seen the movie. I've read a little bit of how it went down, and it seems pretty clear that he like dealt them dirty. So I'm excited for the day when, because then they took the money, they did sue him and they did win, and they got like 50 million. They invested that in Bitcoin. I can't wait till their net worths are much, much bigger than Zuckerberg's.
Yeah. I don't know if I'll comment on that, but I'm not. I left Facebook a few years ago, and I haven't really regretted it. I'll say that much.
Oh yeah, you mean working at Facebook, or you mean having stuff on Facebook?
No, having stuff on.
Yeah. Yeah, Facebook is phasing out, which is why they've turned, because like the youth don't use Facebook, they use TikTok and they use other things, and so Facebook is on its deathbed, and so that's why they're trying to innovate with the metaverse stuff. However, fair to say, in the audience, anyone here still love Facebook and still trust them 100%? Fair to say, when they start their metaverse stuff, that this time we're going to be a lot more skeptical of the company than we were with Facebook. We're like, oh yeah, this is great, we can do it. But I think they've kind of burned their credibility bridges with just about everyone. And so I don't know about you, but I'm not. I like that they're operating in the new metaverse space, and that brings attention to crypto and Web3. I'm skeptical about whether I'm going to
Yeah,
trust
I think
the system that
at
they
the end of
built.
the day, I don't know all their plans, but at the end of the day, centralized is centralized and decentralized is decentralized. And so, as much as you want to say you're building something Web3 without decentralization really isn't Web3.
Yeah, and they want to charge some fees or something like, I can't remember what they were charging the fees for, but it's something like they were going to take like 40% or something. I'm like, what in the world? They better have. I just can't even see what they could produce that they would be more successful.
Yeah, I think it's probably, they have people that are on there every day. And so how can you monetize? I'm sure in their meetings, they're just, how can we monetize the relationships between people even further? Well, we can
But
allow them to send money, and we can, attach fees to it. So it's not technically innovative, though.
Yeah, they also plan to go this metaverse route, right? And so what are they going to charge 40% of when people make purchases? I guess they're thinking kind of maybe like the App Store. And so when somebody purchases these shoes in real life, we're going to charge Nike 40% or whatever. But number one, they have a lot of people using Facebook. That doesn't necessarily mean a lot of people are going to play their metaverse version. Number two, like these big ships, they become so big, they become very hard to navigate and turn. And so if you see, like Microsoft came in and crushed IBM in the long run. IBM was the behemoth. It's not like IBM didn't try to compete with Microsoft once they recognized Microsoft as a threat. They did. They just were out innovated by a nimble ship that was small and easy to navigate in the right directions that would get attention. And so I just don't know that Facebook, and even with the name change and them pouring billions into the metaverse, I just don't know that they're part of the future more than they are the part of the past.
Yeah, I think, it's innovator's dilemma, right? It's hard to chew away at your own bottom line currently in order to, win the race for the, bottom line of the future. It's always a tough transition.
They have a lot of Facebook users, but they're not capturing any of the youth. So a lot of the Facebook users got started sometime within the past, like 3 to 15 years ago. And like you just showcased, some people are leaving. Why? Well, because either you don't trust them, or you feel burned in some ways, or it's just no longer relevant to your life.
It's just not a good experience anymore. What somebody I barely knew in high school is going, like I'm a pretty fierce defender of my mental real estate. I call it, what occupies my, my mind. And so I think all of us coming out of Web 2 have to be diligent about what takes our attention and where our attention goes. And so that was most of my reason, is like, do I really need this really adding value to my day, or is it, pulling me down and, causing me to waste time? And about stuff that really doesn't matter at the end of the day to get where I want to go.
True. Good point. Well, great. Leo, thank you for joining us. Any audience member? Yeah, this topic that we're talking about is a little bit slow. And that's what I felt about DeFi. And anyway, I wanted to do this live stream in case anyone had a question. I know right now the crypto market is down. In fact, it's way down. And I'm here with you. It's just part of it. Like, this is what the crypto winter felt like before. And so there's two ways that things take gains in the crypto market. Number one, it's money changing from one part of within the crypto market to another, or it's money coming in from outside. And the real price gains happen when money comes in from the outside. It's a new wave of incoming money comes. It comes in. That's not happening now. But those that make smart decisions now, when that wave does come, they're the ones that really benefit. And I saw that wave. Some of that was fresh money coming into DeFi. A lot of it was changing hands within other parts of it. And that made some people multimillionaires overnight.
Yeah. So I think there's a quote, legends are made in bear markets.
Yeah. Santiago had a good question because this definitely has to do with Web3. What do you think about Reddit launching NFTs?
I think overall, I think Reddit is great, and I think you know, I don't know a lot about their NFT play per se, but I think that they've got at least one deeply kind of technical audience, and that's where we go to test out a lot of our ideas and get feedback. So I think the communities that they have that are still on there, and the conversations that you can't find anywhere else, it makes sense. But again, anybody can launch a decentralized asset like an NFT, but when it comes from something that's centralized, it doesn't make on some level it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I'll be interested to see where that goes and how they're used.
It will be.
But I think it's every company is trying to do their NFTs.
I think Web3 will be a combination of still some centralized organizations and companies and some decentralized ones, and it depends on how good that centralized and how trustworthy that centralized organization is, because decentralization, part of the reason why decentralization becomes so critical is because lack of trust of the centralized organizations that we used to trust, and then they burn in some different ways. They burn their credibility, they burn that trust, and then you no longer trust them. And so I think Facebook has burned many of their users. Some people like you are just tired of the headspace that it takes up and looking to make it more productive. So I don't know if Facebook makes that transition. I do think that there will be some centralized organizations that do. Which ones?
Well, yeah, I think Reddit is a company that would probably love to make that transition because I think it's aligns more with their values probably. Yeah, and maybe even Twitter as well. I mean, I think that's why Jack is investing in this Web5. But honestly, we have the platform that they can come to. So if
so funny,
if the guys at Reddit or Twitter are listening, come and you can launch your new platform on Cortex.
Yes, it just cracks me up. He's calling it Web5, right? I'm going to get a bunch of tech people that are smarter than me, and we're going to start the revolution right now. Right?
Yeah. I don't know how much of that is trolling, right?
I know, right? Don't go anywhere. You're in the right place as tech history is being made, and you're part of that history, experiencing it firsthand. And I know this topic was difficult. It's a little bit hard to wrap our minds around. Thank you, Leo, so much for joining us. But you'll see Web3 is going to be a huge part of the future, and that some of the biggest gains in the future will be in Web3 companies. Which ones? I don't know. Leo specifically works with Cortex, which is building ways for you to be able to put your own data, own your own data, put your own social media together. And what's, again, it's hmn.domains for anyone who wants to go get their own domain.
And crtx.app is our website.
Got it. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you all next time. Remember, no rain, no gain.
Thanks, Rain. Great to be here.
Thanks, Leo.
Thanks, everybody.
Came into the space chasing all of the gains, chasing the pumps and all of the hype trains. But like in life, shit right before you could. Was taught to buy when it was pouring like a rainmaker should. I buy when it's down, don't chase the boats that I miss. Cause I always make the time in mind. I stick the one out cause I'm patient like that. And I'll wait for the right time. I sell when it's high, I buy when it's low. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm just a rainmaker, running show. Calculated investments, I don't lead with my heart. The principles are simple, they're leaving a mark. Why when it's boring, just gotta be smart. I sell when it's hype, like all the channels they pump it. That's when I was selling, go parabolic and dump it. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Time is never better, the time like the present. This next 5 years is a gift and it's feeling like heaven. I'm committed to learn, to study and to know that nothing comes easy but with knowledge the game show. Sticking out this road cause soon will come a bear market. Learning and growing and when it's slow will be the target. They say it's come out, Bitcoin is dead. The massive decreases can get to your head. Sticking around, the time is better. Strong like that, I'll let the others be fretters. 2 years time the ball will bring back the gains. That makes it worth the effort cause here comes the rain. So let's go rainmakers, let's make it all happen. They go with the hate, let the haters be crapping. I'm here for 5 years, let's do this together. The time is right, the time could be better. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Haters be hating, the time to slow down. Addressing what they say when I'm wearing my crown. They're chasing green candles like someone who was new. I got a vision that was bigger, helping me to push through. I'm still human and sometimes it is rough. And that's what makes me special, simply I stay tough. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck.